Hello everyone, welcome to Fit Frontliners as we are looking at ways to get more fit in the gym and also with our nutrition. You can always check out our blog at fitfrontliners.com. Today we're looking at a Model C Concept 2 rower. I'm going to be doing some maintenance on it. You might be able to use this video to help you at home in your home gym with maintenance on your rower as well. We're going to do a couple different things today. First, we're going to change out the chain on this Concept 2 rower. It's been a while since it's been changed out. We're also going to oil it up and try to keep it in good condition. With this Concept 2 rower as well, there's a sensor for the Concept 2. I have a PM3 monitor here that came with mine. The person I bought it from didn't think it was working, but when I did some investigation, I realized the monitor works great, but the problem is this cord right here, and so we're going to replace that. That way the sensor is working to make the monitor work. If you have any questions, please let me know. Hopefully this will help you with your home gym. So the first thing that we're going to do in order to do some maintenance on this rower is first break it apart into two. So this allows us to be able to get to the chain and the sensor cord more easily. So what I do on at least the Concept 2 Model C is there's a little wheel down here. I pull on it, and what it'll do is it'll start spinning. And when that happens, I'm able to lift up and then slide this out, and I can then take this piece and store it. So I'll just put that piece aside for now, and then I'll take this other piece, and this is the piece with the chain and the flywheel, and I'll turn this over. So as I turn this over, what I'm doing is wanting to get it in a position where I can get to the chain. And so I'll flip it over and get it where I can work on it. Once I get the rower where I can work on it, the first thing I need to do is find the shock cord, which is right here if you look inside the rower, and I need to disconnect the shock cord. So what I do is I take it, I pull it up, and then I push in, and there's actually, might be a little hard to see, but there's a little metal piece here that just connects, and I take it, and I then disconnect it, and it comes right out like this. Next, I want to get a 7/16 wrench and a screwdriver, and as I reach into the area where the chain is, I can lift it up, and there's a bracket here. And if you look at this bracket, one end, you put your screwdriver in, and the other end, don't do that, but the other end you can then unscrew with the wrench, and what we're going to want to do is disconnect the chain. So we're going to remove the screw from the mechanism here, and as we do that, we're going to be left with this part of the chain, and now the chain is disconnected. So we're going to lay that aside, and then we're going to get the actual handle down here, and we're going to pull on it some and stretch the chain out some. So as we get to this, notice at the top here how the handle connects to the chain. We're going to need to next disconnect this. So the next thing that we're going to do is take our handle. If you have a wooden handle like this one, which are commonly on the Model C rower, and take it in this metal U-hook here, you want to hit it. The purpose of hitting it lightly with a hammer is if you look at the other side, by hitting it, you're going to get the nuts from the bolts to be exposed, so then you can unscrew them and disconnect the chain from the handle. On the instructions from Concept 2, it says that you just need a 7/16 wrench. However, in my handle here, it's actually a 1/2 inch bolt. I don't know if someone in the past changed these nuts out, or if it's actually 1/2 and not 7/16 is the way it was built. But regardless, I got a 1/2 wrench, and then what I'll do is I'll use that to remove the bolts and then disconnect the chain. So once I've disconnected the bolts from the handle, your handle you set aside, and then this U-hook you can just take out of the old chain. When you do that, you notice as you grab your new chain, and I ordered this off of Concept 2's website, it has another end exactly like the old one. And so, as you might imagine, you just slide the U-hook through there, and now your new chain is connected so you can connect it back to the handle. So once you connect the new chain back on the U-hook, you'll slide that hook through the handle, and then you'll put the new nuts on the end of the U-hook like this. And then make sure as you do this that you're using the right holes. You need to have it where the U-hook will be able to slide back into the holes after you get done screwing in. So the bigger holes are the side that the nuts need to go onto the bolts. And once you sort of hand tighten these onto the bolts, you'll then get your wrench and then tighten them the rest of the way. Once you get done tightening them as tight as they'll go, you'll take your hammer, you'll lightly hit on the nuts here until they go through the holes, which then allows the U-hook to come out like it should on the other side. So the next thing that you're going to want to do once you get the chain connected to the handle is I took the chain and I laid it out in a long strip, and then what I'll do is I'll take the end and I'll take my old chain, and I still have it sitting there in the rower like this. The reason for that is obviously I could pull it right now and it would just come out, but what I want to do is take that chain and follow the way the chain is already set up on the rower, and then I'll take my new chain and put it where the old chain is as I remove the old chain. So I'll take the end of this chain, and the first thing I'm going to do, remember the rower is upside down, so it's backwards. So the open part of the rower where you can look into is here, but as you look down the part of the rower that you normally are looking at when rowing, there is the end of it as you go between the monitor setup here and what I'll do is I'll just feed the chain in the hole where the current chain is going. So the next thing that we're going to do is thread the chain through and remove the old chain at the same time. I like leaving the old chain on as long as I can because then I can sort of helps remind me of how the chain actually goes. So as the chain loops, remember this is upside down, as the chain loops in and you feed it through to I have the new chain right here, what I do is I then thread it through. You're going to find there's two, and I know it's sort of hard to see, but you're going to find there's two things that the chain connects to. There's one on the top and one on the bottom. The sprocket on the bottom that's on the axle, we're actually going to replace later as well. I usually recommend replacing that while you're changing your chain. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and thread on the bottom and come back through. If you remember in the beginning up here, we disconnected the chain right here. And so we're going to then thread the chain back through this, and then we're going to go through again and to the top sprocket, and that's how the chain is going to go. So I've got the chain essentially looped around the rower. And so what I'm going to do is, as I've got it somewhat tight, I've got the original sprocket, or not sprocket, bracket that we disconnected it from the beginning. I've got it here. But if you notice, it doesn't have the things for the screw to go through. And so I need to put those on before I reconnect the screw back. Also a note while I'm doing that is when I put the chain through, I did not put the chain all the way around the sprocket. And the reason for that is, one, it's difficult without removing it, and two, I'm going to remove it anyway on my next step. So I just sort of left it sitting there beside it, because when I remove it and replace that sprocket, then I'll connect the chain all the way there. I would recommend replacing that anyway, so I would just make sure that you either replace the sprocket before you put the chain on, or as you're putting the chain on, or after you're putting the chain on. But anyway, put the sprocket on, then make sure the chain fits accordingly. So I've got these little pieces right here that will go together and make it where I can put the screw back through. And so what I'll do is I'll connect these. And you can probably sort of see me doing this on the video. And as I connect these, then what I'll do is I'll connect the additional piece together, and then I'll put the screw through on the bracket, which will then complete the chain. So I've got the pieces placed on the end of the chain. So now I've got the bracket, I've got my screw, and so I put this in the hole, put the screw through the hole of the chain, and then I'll reconnect it. And of course, this is going to be a little bit difficult, so sometimes it takes a little bit of trial and error just due to the tightness of the chain, which is a good thing. And so I slide that through there, as you may or may not be able to see, and then I put it through the end. And then I'll get the nut that we originally unscrewed with a 7/16 wrench, and I'll just hand tighten it just to keep it on there. And then I'll go back and tighten it all the way with the wrench. So once I've got the chain screwed back into the bracket, if you remember, the very first thing we did was took the shock cord, and it's like a little bungee cord, and we undid it from the frame. So we're going to want to reconnect that back onto the frame. Now the chain is on the rower, with the exception of it's not all the way around the sprocket. That's okay. We're going to replace that anyway, and then we'll put it on there as we replace it. So the next step that we'll do is we're going to, if you look, you've got your end of your axle here, and it goes all the way through the chain, which has a sprocket, and I'm going to place the axle as well, and goes through the flywheel. So we're going to go and unscrew or loosen part of the flywheel, and that way we can get to that axle. So the next thing that we're going to do is work on replacing the axle and the sprocket that the chain goes around. So in order to do that, first we need to take apart the flywheel. So what I did is I flipped the rower over to get to the flywheel, and what I'll do now is I'm going to take it apart, and I'm going to loosen each screw and take the cover off. Be sure that when you're doing this, that you that you keep track of what screws go where, and I would keep track of your screws. That way, later when we flip this back over and put this back on, you'll be able to put it back together easily. So what we'll do is we'll take each screw out. Like I said, there's 4 of them, and then we'll take the flywheel off, cover off, and then we'll take the flywheel off to get to that axle. So once you get the cover off, you see the flywheel here. This is a great opportunity to clean it if you haven't already, or if yours happens to be dirty. Mine I cleaned a couple days ago, so it does not look too bad. So what I'll do next is I need to replace this axle, and so I will take a 9/16, which is the size that fits onto this, and then I'll go to the other side of the rower where there is a nut that connects to the axle, and I'm just going to loosen this up. You might have to put some pressure on it, as it's probably been a while since it actually was last loosened, and that way you can take it apart. Once again, keep track of your parts as you do this. Once you get the bolt off, the nut off the axle, what you can do is just take the flywheel actually off, and once again, this is a great time to clean it. You can see mine needs a little bit cleaned there because it's probably been a while since this was cleaned, and also the other side I would go ahead and clean as well. And then you can see that the axle is now exposed, which will make it easier for us to switch this out and change it. Now that we've got the inside of this clean, we've got the axle here exposed, and then on the other side of the rower, you'll notice that there is a bolt here. So now what we'll do is we will take our tools, remember 9/16, and I've just got an adjustable wrench. So I'm going to take the adjustable wrench and hold down the axle while I unscrew it from the other side. Alright, so I finally got the nut off the axle. If you have trouble getting this off, one thing you might want to do is reach inside the area where the chain is and look for the sprocket, and grab the sprocket with an adjustable wrench and hold that, and then take your 9/16 wrench and just take them and go different directions. A lot of times that'll help you loosen it up. So now that we have that loose, now we will get the axle out and replace it with a new axle. Alright, so I got the axle out. You can tell that the axle that was in there had been a while since it was replaced. You can see signs of rust on it, and it just is in generally bad condition. So I've bought a new axle. I got it from Concept 2's store, not very expensive. I would definitely recommend doing this. And then the parts come with it, so I put them on exactly like the old axle. And then also with the parts that come with it, a new outer piece comes with it. So I'm just going to reach in, pop that piece off, and then I'm just going to put a new piece on there, exactly like the old piece was on. You can also see there's signs of wear on that piece, so just helping the system last longer by replacing the little parts and making sure everything's in good condition. So gonna take the axle, and this is, like I said, the new axle. I'm going to put it through from the flywheel side, and I'm just gonna put it in exactly the way it was when I took it out. So I'm just gonna reach from behind and do that. As I put that in, I'm gonna pull back on the chain, and that way, as this goes in, the chain will just go over onto the sprocket. Now our chain is gonna be in place in the correct way. So we finally got the chain over the axle and the sprocket. So now we just need to put the bolts back on the axle. So I'm also gonna replace this piece. It was a little bit dirty, so I'll pop that back in there. And once I get that in, then I'll get the nut and put that over the axle to bolt it back down. I'm just going to use the same nut that had already been used. So now that we've got the nut put in on the axle and got that bolted back down, there's a chain idler attachment right above this. So I went ahead and took my Allen wrench and unscrewed it, and then on the other side by the flywheel, this piece, there's a hole, there's a screw as well that I unscrewed to where I got the attachment piece loose. So what I did is then I can sort of move this loose. You can see it's around the chain. It goes up like this, and I just want to replace this piece right here. So I'm just going to take this off. And then the kit that Concept 2 sent me has a new piece, so I'm just going to hold the chain and then slide this off, slide the new piece on, put the chain back on, and then I'll just screw it back into place. Super quick, super easy, but once again, just replacing parts that have some wear and tear on them while I have it apart. Once you get done replacing the chain idler and screwing it back in, I then would take this piece that we took off earlier when we were unscrewing it, and I would just pop it back on, and then you're done replacing the chain idler. The last thing that I have to do before we put the machine back together is, for me personally, you may not want to do this if yours is not bad, but there is a sensor cord if that connects into your monitor. I have a PM3 monitor and it connects to the bottom here. Mine is bad, and so my monitor is stuck on 0. So I just ordered a new cord from Concept 2, and you can see the cord, the old cord is here, and it sort of sticks through the monitor. And so what I do is I will just replace that with a new cord. The sensor cord is located under this bungee cord. It connects to the back of the monitor. And so if you look real close into here, it's a black thing, at least for the Concept 2, that just screws into the back of the flywheel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unscrew that, and then I'm going to screw the new one on right where the old one was, and then I'll just loop the cord through exactly the way it already was. The view of the other side of the motion sensing cord here is on this side of the flywheel. This is the new cord that I'm going to replace, and you can see that it looks exactly the same as the old one. This is the old one that's still connected to my machine. And then if you look on this side of the flywheel, you see that this part of the sensing cord comes through, and that I'll pull that out and put this one in. You'll also notice that this piece, I dropped it, this piece comes with it, and this piece will come through on this side of the machine. And you can see that that piece is going through right there. And so what I'll do, like I said, is unscrew it on the other side and replace this and put this in as the old one had it. So once again, this is the new cord. I ordered it offline or online from Concept 2. It's like $18, $19 monitor pickup sensing cord, and you have to get the cord that's appropriate for your model. This is a Model C cord, which is why I have this particular part. So my old Concept 2 motion pickup sensor
I'm not exactly sure how long it's been on this machine, but it's the reason the monitor's not working. So the new one has an actual screw that you use to screw it in and attach on the other side. This old one doesn't have that, so I'm just going to lightly hit a hammer and get this to pop through to be able to remove this, as it does not have something to unscrew on the other side. So I got most of it as I was hammering it to go through. However, a little bit didn't want to go through, so what I did is I just took a pair of pliers and I just squeezed this plastic piece together. Basically, it doesn't really matter how you get it off as long as you can get it through the hole without breaking the rest of your system. So I just squeezed this together, and then once I have this squeezed together, I'll hammer it a little bit more. It's already loose on the other side here, which allows me to then pull this screw piece out that I was unable to get to. And then I'll just push this piece through the rest of the way. And then as I've done that, I've got the piece off. And then the only other thing remaining is this piece right here. And then that removes this piece from the other side. So like I said, after I get this off, what I'll do is I'll just leave the cord threaded through like it was earlier. And then I'll replace this piece, then I'll thread the cord at that point. So the pickup sensor cord was super easy to replace. I pushed the old piece out after I squeezed together the pliers, grabbed it, pulled it out, and it's sitting right here as I showed you earlier. And then the new piece, I literally just pushed through in the exact same place it already was. There was a, and I'll show you just for demonstration purposes, but basically on the old one, you can see there's just a hole here, and on this hole, you just put the screw through that goes through there, and then you just screw it in and it tightens to hold in place. And so I just dropped mine like that as I was pulling out to show you, but basically super easy. You have a bungee cord in the way, you just lift it out of place, and then literally you take this piece, you can just see it's a screw just like that, and then put through that hole where it's lined up with the existing hole on the Concept 2 rope. And then once I get that into place, I'll use a screwdriver and I'll screw till it pushes outward to hold into place, and then you've got this installed. Then all you have to do is thread the cord. So once you get your pickup sensor installed, the last thing to do is just follow the cord. So this is the old pickup sensor and this is the old cord, and as you can see, it sort of goes through from the pickup sensor down by the chain down toward where you sit on the rower. Remember, this is upside down, and this is actually here the part you connect the monitor to, and so it's a little bit of a tight fit here to get the cord through. So in order to get the old cord out and the new cord in, what I'll do is I'll just get an Allen wrench here. I've already loosened these up a little bit before we started. So what I'll do is I'll loosen up this hardware, which then will allow me to get the cord out and put the new cord through. Alright, so I got my new cord threaded through, my old cord removed, and so what I do is I just sort of tighten the bolts back up. The way I do that is I have a wrench on the back and then just sort of tighten with the Allen wrench. It takes I believe a 7/16 size wrench, just so you know, at least on this Model C. I get them all tight. Also, while I had it apart, I just sort of ran a rag underneath this piece right here, because it's been a long time since it was off and just got all the dust and stuff out of it, just because I like to keep my machine as clean as possible. So at this point, I've got this cord threaded as much as they did. When I flip this back over, I'll thread it through to where you attach the monitor, and then all you have to do is attach the monitor just like you took it off, and then you'll plug this right in, or you may not even detach your monitor, and you can just plug this right in where the old one was. So then all we have to do now is we've got everything replaced. Now we just have to put the machine back together just the way we took it apart. So the first thing that we'll do with that is we'll start with the flywheel. And what we'll do is we'll grab the old flywheel parts, and we'll just slowly put them back on one by one, as at this point we've replaced the axle and we've replaced the pickup sensor. And so we've cleaned it out and now just ready to put it back, and then that way we have a great smooth running machine. So let's take the flywheel. Like I said, this is the part we took off earlier. If you haven't cleaned yours recently, before you put it back on, it'll be a great time to go through and just sort of get the dust out as much as you can. I think the better condition you keep your equipment in, the longer it's going to last you, and you're not going to have as many issues at that point. So at that point, you just lift this back on, and then you can see it just sort of spins on like that. It only goes back so far. Then grab the nut that you'd used earlier to get this off, and then just put that back on. Well, don't drop it like I did, but just put that back on. So what you'll need to tighten this, if you don't remember from earlier, is a 9/16 wrench. So I just hand tighten it, and then I'll reach back here, keep hand tightening it, and then give it just a little bit of a tighten with the wrench until it's nice and snug. At that point, you've got the flywheel replaced, and then you just need the cover to put back on. So if you remember right, you had the cover and it just screwed into these places right here, and with just a screwdriver. Side cover, I flipped the machine over just to make it easier and more stable when I put this part on, and because we're done with the underside of the machine. And so what I did is, as I flipped this machine over, I took the monitor attachment here, and then I took the cord, and I just there's a groove that the cord goes in, and I just sort of put it over there, just like that. That way it's ready for when I attach the monitor. Then I just take this outside flywheel and make sure that the numbers are pointing towards the seat, and then just line the holes up with each hole on the rower. And it sort of pops back on there, and then you should have saved your screws from earlier when we took that off, so I'll just hand screw a couple of them in there, and that way it'll hold this on. And then do the ones on the bottom. Sometimes these last couple are a little more difficult, just getting everything in line with the holes. You may have to sort of pull this over a little bit. So at this point, all of mine are in line, with the exception of this one. Still needs adjusted just a little bit, so doing that. Now I've got that one in as well. So now all I have to do is screw all these in all the way, and then this part will be put back together. So we are almost done maintaining our machine. Everything's changed out. Now all we have to do is finish putting the machine back together. The last step to put the machine back together is, if you remember in the very beginning, we broke it apart into two pieces. So you see the second piece is standing up back there. So now we just have to take that second piece, snap it back into place. Super easy. It's a little bit different depending on which model you have. Like I said, this is the Model C, and so some of the later models have a little bit different mechanisms to snap back into place. Basically, you look underneath, there's a lip right here, and then on the actual rower, there's a metal groove. So you just take the spin piece at the bottom, and you just put, as you go downward, just make sure that groove is hidden, and then it snaps back into place just like that. At that point, you just reach underneath to make sure that this wheel is locked into place, and now it won't come apart, and your Concept 2 rower is put back together. One last thing that I like to do before I finish putting all my tools and everything away after maintaining equipment such as this rower is I just changed out the chain, and so I use some 3-in-1 chain oil. I actually get this from Concept 2's website as well. It's what they recommend is a multi-purpose oil. It lubricates and also cleans the chain. Our chain's obviously clean, but I want to keep it that way. And I want to make sure it's nice and lubricated for when I'm rowing. And so what I'll do is I'll cut the top off of this bottle, and then I have a little rag here. I'll put some oil on the rag, and then I'll pull the chain out as far as I can, and I'll just wipe this up and down the chain just to make sure it's nice and oiled. At that point, I am done, and so at that point I can go to rowing, and my machine is nice and maintained until next time.